So now to a human rights lawyer and activist, person who's engaged in international justice work. I think one of the things, the subtext of this film is that it's a global court, and that global court affects countries like Uganda and the Congo and Sudan and potentially a range of others. But it also potentially touches the interests of very powerful countries, and the United States is clearly one of them. And if I may tip my hand for a moment to reveal that I'm not an altogether unbiased moderator, every time I see John Bolton on this film, I think to myself, thank God he has gone. And so one of the questions I'd like to put to you is, tell us a little bit about the United States' attitude to international justice in general, perhaps over a few years, and then we can burrow in a little bit later on its attitude to the court.
With your permission, and I want to first address a point that Christine made, and then I'll come back to that. Christine, you talked about the satisfaction that you received from being with victims. And I just want to make another point about the satisfaction that derives from being with not perpetrators, but deterred perpetrators. I worked in the International Committee of the Red Cross Legal Division for several years. In the main building of the Red Cross, there is a tapestry that has a statement from Nelson Mandela on it, and it says something to the effect of that the strength of the ICRC, which is an evangelical organization but evangelizes for the Geneva Conventions and not any religion, the strength of the ICRC is in the atrocities that it prevents and not in the atrocities that occur. And I think it's very easy to become despondent when we see the breadth of atrocities that take place in the world. We had one mission to the Congo in which we met with members of armed opposition groups, some of the very people that are responsible for the most atrocious atrocities that come to the attention of the court. But some of the individuals that we encountered there had heard of the ICC. And it was the one and only thing in the world that they were afraid of in connection with their doings. And it occurred to me here that in some of the furthest reaches of the world, there is the power of deterrence that comes from the mere existence of the ICC that has nothing to do with its actually having prosecuted cases successfully, unsuccessfully, or whatever. Just the deterrent knowledge of the existence of the institution, I think, is an extremely powerful thing. To your question, the United States has had a fraught relationship with the International Criminal Court, and during the entire life of the Bush administration, as you well know from seeing the film, if not before, the stance of the United States was not only to turn its back on the International Criminal Court, but in fact to have taken active measures to attempt to at least marginalize it, if not see its demise. More recently, and with the advent of the Obama administration, but even before, there has been a shift, a noticeable shift, which is not to say that the United States is going to join the International Criminal Court anytime soon. But there are quite a number of very important interim measures that the United States can, and we hope will, take to ease its hostility to the International Criminal Court, to increase its cooperation with the International Criminal Court in terms of the court's investigations, and the United States' involvement in the development of the International Criminal Court, even though the U.S. may not soon become a member of it. Another important thing is that the United States, as any other country in the world, can and should, step by step, amend its own criminal laws, so that they parallel, they mirror the list of crimes that are punishable by the International Criminal Court. And this is a work in progress that we hope to be able to make some headway with during the Obama administration. But at the same time, we have some positive signs that the United States will also want to increase its cooperation with the court in terms of assisting with investigations, in terms of taking part in the mechanics of the court, even though it does not join as a party to the International Criminal Court. And the difficult aspects of this come, though, not so much from the perspective that you may have heard before about protecting the American serviceman from the jurisdiction of the court, because the U.S. has international presence among its military like no other country does. That's what you've heard is maybe behind the American Servicemen's Protection Act. The reality is that the United States is concerned, and I think has good reason to be concerned, not about the foot soldier, but about the planners and makers of policies like those who wrote the torture memos in the Bush administration. Those are the kinds of things that the U.S. is concerned about as coming within the purview of the court, and that caused the U.S. continued trepidation.
So does that mean that, viewed from a perspective of pure self-interest, U.S. policymakers were quite correct to eschew the court and not to ratify it, because had they ratified the court in 1998, and then had September 11th happened, and had the torture that had been authorized occurred, the U.S. leaders and lawyers who authorized this would in fact have been potentially liable before the court.
I think the operative word is potentially. But the ICC ain't stupid. And by that I mean to refer to, first of all, a number of technical impediments that would come before the ICC in the prosecutor's potential desire to put Americans on trial. And while the ICC could nominally exercise jurisdiction over the writers of torture memos if the United States were a party to the International Criminal Court. I think the prudential decision of the prosecutor would be guided by one of the fundamental principles within the Rome Statute for the ICC, which is that the court will concentrate its efforts on not only genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity that it may have technical jurisdiction over, but only in the cases where these crimes are widespread and systematic. And so it may very well be that there are a lot of crimes that occur in many countries that could technically come within the purview of the ICC, but if they don't rise to the level of widespread and systematic, then I think it would be, they would be rejected by the prosecutor. And I think that the crimes that have been committed by high-level officials in the United States would probably not fall within the purview of widespread and systematic.